Hello, my name is Andre Ward, and I'm the Associate Vice President of the David Rothenberg Center for Public Policy at the Fortune Society. Welcome to Both Sides of the Bars, a discussion-driven show that examines the legal system from various perspectives, including people most impacted by the criminal legal system. We discuss critical questions about how the current system works, its intersections with social justice, and we highlight the efforts that are being made to improve the lives of everyone affected. We ask you, the viewers, to spread the word about both sides of the bars and share your comments with us on Twitter at the Fortune Society SOC. Today's show is entitled The 2020 Census, Stand Up and Be Counted. All too often, communities that are least resourced are not involved in being counted during the census. For those people having justice involvement, being counted during the census just doesn't seem important, as they focus more on acclimating back into society. Yet being counted during the census is a critical part of gaining access to federal tax dollars to provide communities with much needed resources. This year's 2020 population numbers will shape how political power and federal tax dollars are shared in the U.S. over the next 10 years. It will also determine the number of congressional seats and electoral college votes each state will get, and guide how an estimated $880 billion a year in federal funding is distributed for schools, roads, and other public services in local communities. Today we will discuss the importance of the 2020 census and what people can do to participate in it. Our guest today is Kathleen Daniel, who is the field director of New York City Census 2020, an organizing initiative established to ensure a complete and accurate count of all New Yorkers in the 2020 census. Kathleen previously served for several years as outreach director for Brooklyn Borough President Eric L. Adams, and she has been an advocate on behalf of survivors of domestic violence. Kathleen, welcome to Both Sides of the Bars. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Andre.
So good to have you here today. And you know, as we're talking about the census of 2020, it's so important. And for our listening audience and our viewers, we want to talk a little bit about the history of the census. Talk to us about what is the census 2020? What is census in general?
Absolutely. So the census is a massive count of everybody in the country. And note, I stopped at everybody. That means literally every person living in the United States. The census is the largest mobilization of people in the country during peacetime. Everyone across the country are sitting in spaces just like this, talking about the census, because in 29 days, on March 12th, it goes live. And the reason that we do this, it's provided for in the Constitution. We've been doing this in America since 1790. Many countries conduct a census. It is so that we can properly allocate resources per city, per state, based on population. You're not going to make an investment, excuse me, where there are no people, right? And so what I like to say is something that they said in the Bronx, the census is basically your RSVP for what could be the greatest party in the world, just living in America, living right here in NYC. But our host, America, is not prepared for us, so sometimes this party is a little challenging and not festive, simply because we did not RSVP. And when we look at the resources that come down for infrastructure, tunnels, roads, bridges, Head Start, education, Title I funding, after-school programs, Medicare, senior services, we're looking at the quality of our lives here are incumbent upon us simply participating in filling in 10 simple questions online or on the phone starting in the next 29 days.
So in the next 29 days, right, people are going to have to be in action with getting counted. I mean, I like the analogy of like the RSVP analogy, right? People have to RSVP to get access to this party. And I guess that translates into, you know, people being counted, right, they can have access to these resources that are much needed in communities. So, I mean, talk to me, like, what brought you to this work, Kathleen? You've been doing it for like many, many years. I've like been around you, a huge fan, right? You're like totally like energetic. You take up the entire space like with your energy. What brought you to this work around census, the census work?
So I worked for the census, and I've been a lifelong activist. So even in my undergraduate career, I started working with organizations like NYPIRG on well water and recycling. I won't date myself, but recycling was not always the law, right? But I never thought that it would be a career. And when I talk to my parents, I'm the first American born of Haitian immigrants, they go, "You're going to organize closets? What do you mean organize," right? And so working on various issues, particularly when you become a parent, when you have children, you put them in the school system, I've been organizing around various issues for some time. I worked for the Federal Census Bureau in 2000 as an enumerator, literally knocking on doors, taking information.
And what is an enumerator, by the way? What is that?
You. So an enumerator, and they're hiring tens of thousands of enumerators right now to conduct the census. The Federal Census Bureau actually conducts and monitors the census. And so they hire people to go into communities and literally knock on doors for people who have not responded to the census. And that starts right around May 15. And they will knock on your door. They are working for the federal government. They will have ID. And if you did not complete the census at that time, they will ask you the questions and complete the census for you. The challenge with that is, having worked for the census in 2000 and 2010, there's never been an accurate count. And that is because one of the reasons in New York City, do you want anyone knocking on your door unannounced?
No, not necessarily, especially if I don't know who they are.
Thank you. We're just not the kind of people that open the door for just anyone.
Right.
And then when you look at specifically people that are immigrants, undocumented, or people returning home and re-entering who are justice involved, they certainly don't want to open the door for someone they don't know. Additionally, census enumerators will ask for proxy information. If you're not home when they come, or if you don't answer the door, they can ask the person at the bodega, they can ask someone sitting on the stoop who may or may not know you. And so their job is to count, not to research the information. Who knows better about who's living in your house or who's on your couch than you? And so this is an opportunity, particularly for people re-entering society, to stand up and be counted and speak for themselves. Because self-response, doing it yourself, DIY the census, we always say, is the most accurate information we can get, because nobody knows better than you who's in your house.
So I see you have your New York Census 2020 shirt on, and hopefully I'll be able to get one too at some point. And there's obviously some fears and concerns on the part of people, like giving up their information to people. Like, I'll give you my information, you're gonna use it to do something malicious or something like that. How do we engage that, right? To kind of dispel some of those myths, right? Around people misusing your information for other purposes.
And I'm glad that you bring that up, because privacy is job one. It is paramount, particularly with the history that America has with people of color and people in urban areas, and the history that the census has itself. So the census started in 1790. And during that time, there was, at 1787, there was a constitutional convention. And that is the convention where the southern states worked with the northern states to develop the 3/5 compromise, that the enslaved people in the southern states will be counted as 3/5 of a human being. And that gave the southern states more power in Congress, because the census data directly correlates to the number of seats we have in Congress, number of representatives, and the number of votes in the Electoral College. And so for power, they counted people as 3/5 of a human being. Then there was the Jim Crow era, where people were counted, but a lot of racist ideology was used in order to classify people as having pure white blood or having a drop of blood, and they had to use some really, really racist terminology. And that was done away with around the 1930s. Then we had a tragedy in this country. During World War II, the Census Bureau released its data, its personally identifiable information about people's names and addresses, to the federal government, and Japanese Americans were ripped from their homes and put into internment camps right here in this country. And so after World War II, the outcry went out. We resolved the 3/5 compromise by abolishing slavery with the 13th Amendment, by the 14th Amendment having a portion in there that deleted the 3/5 compromise entirely and repealed it. In the Jim Crow era, we resolved it by changing the racial and ethnic categories. We get to say who we are. But the most important victory that we've gotten is Title 13, which was born after the tragedy of the Japanese internment. After this, the 72-year rule was instated. And that rule says that the Census Bureau cannot release your personally identifiable information to any organization, not even to the federal government, not even to law enforcement, for 72 years. And the good thing about that is, one, your information is private. No business or individual or agency can have it.
So I can't, if I'm a law enforcement person, I can't like go to you as an enumerator who collects information, give me that information because I'm in the law.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because the law, Title 13, which is part of the federal statute, supersedes that. And it says for 72 years, no one gets this information. And it further states, because it closes the loopholes, so you know there are always loopholes, but not with Title 13. It closes the loop and says that the census information, the data that is collected, can only be used for statistical purposes and no other purposes. So it's like when your mom said, you gotta be home when the lights come up and don't come in here late. We've closed the loopholes with Title 13. And what is fascinating is you can go all the way back to 1790, 72 years after the census is done, you can go back and trace your ancestry and see who owned your family, or when your family came to the country, or who was really living in your family's household, which is fascinating. I love to watch those types of shows and finding your roots, which is really important that you get your family history. But no one can use the census information that you provide against you. And if anyone were to violate Title 13, which that law has never been violated, it's a 5-year prison sentence and a fine of $250,000.
So someone will be fined $250,000, serve a prison sentence for 5 years if they use your information.
Absolutely. And when you work
in a way that's not how it's supposed to be
absolutely used. And Title 13 is that force field like you have in Wakanda, and you cannot break it. And what is also amazing about this is that once you're a census worker, because I'm working for New York City Census now, not the federal census, but once you are sworn in as a census taker, you're sworn for life. It does not expire when you stop working for the census. So I can never give you the information that I collected from people in 2000 and in 2010.
Right, because you're bound for life. To like holding that information as an oath.
Exactly.
So talk to me about, I mean, you talked about enumerators. So it looks like they'll job opportunities for people, like coming from different communities, communities of color, urban communities, to be hired to do some of this work. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So the census is hiring right now, and people can go online to census.gov, census.gov, and apply for jobs right now. They're going to be hiring upwards of 40,000 different enumerators, because New York City, we have 300 square miles to cover, and we speak over 200 different languages, right? And so they'll be paying $28 an hour for full and part-time employment, and they're specifically they're encouraging people to speak foreign languages, to participate. You do not have to be a citizen to work for the U.S. Census Bureau. You don't have to worry about...
Say that again. You do not have to... Can you say that again?
You do not have to be a citizen to work for the U.S. Census Bureau.
Okay.
You can work for the Census Bureau and not be a citizen. Additionally, you don't have to worry if you're in an affordable housing program, which when you do the census, that data informs affordable housing programs, very important, but you don't have to worry about, I'm going to lose my apartment if I make this $28 an hour because it's based on my income, because the Federal Census Bureau has received a waiver. And so you can make that extra cash, help your community, and still keep your apartment.
So speaking of helping the community, right? In the end, the census is designed to do just that, right? Well, the counting of people for the census is designed to do just that, to help the community.
Exactly.
Like, talk about the ways in which like resources are allocated based on the count, right? I know that obviously monies are earmarked a certain way to be distributed. Talk to us a little bit about where that money goes and maybe how much money. I know we mentioned $880 billion, something to that effect.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
So studies have shown that the census data directly impacts certain funding. We've mentioned Head Start, Medicare, roads, tunnels, bridges, public education, and in that we're talking about breakfast programs, lunch programs, after school programs, Title I funding, so many programs within education. But the census data also impacts and informs so much and so many federal decisions about funding that some estimate that it's more like $1.3 trillion of federal funding that is at stake, because it either is directly impacted or it informs other decisions that are being made. So when you're talking about the census, you're talking about money. This is about resources. money coming back from our tax dollars coming back to us, and we have not been getting our fair share. 10 years ago, only 61% of New Yorkers self-responded and completed the census.
61%?
61%.
Okay.
And when you look at Brooklyn, only 55% of Brooklynites self-responded, meaning did the census themselves. And the national average for self-response is 76%. Now imagine, we were all students. If you could get 100 on an exam and you came in with a 55 or a 61, you had a stomachache. You just did not feel well and you did not feel right. This is failing. This is a D, and since when was New York City on the D list?
Exactly.
We can do better. And when we're talking about resources going into communities, we can walk anywhere in this city, 5 blocks in any direction outside of this studio, and we can see that things are not equal. We can see that some communities have what appears to be everything, and other communities are struggling for resources. Let's take this for example. If we leave a child of 5 years old off of the census, and this is millions of children, 0 to 5 years old, were left off the census across the country, millions. That child will be 15 years old and a sophomore in high school before the census comes around again 10 years later. And have you ever seen a teacher in a New York City public school say, I'm sorry, but you can't come to school because we were only expecting 100 students? No, if they're expecting 100 based on the population data and 150 show up, every student will be cared for, God bless the teachers and the principals, but they won't get the attention that they need. They won't get the resources they need. The school will be underfunded. There won't be athletic equipment, arts programs, after-school programs for everyone. So everyone's going to stretch it thin and do without for 10 years.
10 years. So I mean, in thinking about the census, right, for those who are justice involved, right, how does that impact those who are justice involved? People on parole, people under parole or probation supervision, there's this fear and apprehension to be involved in the census, but how important is it for people who have justice involvement to be a part of the census?
So we should acknowledge the fear. This is a healthy, rational fear. In the past, if authority knocked on doors, bad things have happened, right? Challenging times ensued. And so this is a rational fear. I want to be sure that we acknowledge that and speak to that. You're not crazy if you don't want someone you don't know, or if you don't want the federal government knocking on your door, especially if you are justice involved or have been. However, this is the one time every 10 years, everyone is equal. Everyone counts as one full person. Everybody's voice matters, particularly people who are re-entering society. This is the one most important thing that you can do and give back to your entire community. Because if communities are undercounted, then they are under-resourced. And this, I dare say, will impact the rate of recidivism later. Because when we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, that's not for 10 years, that's every year these budget decisions are made. Except we get the data that informs the distribution of resources every 10 years. So every 10 years, everybody counts. We make we look at the data that are going to inform decisions every year for 10 years. So when you really look at that, you're talking about $600, $700, $800 billion times 10.
And so we're talking about every borough. The census is happening. Right? Every borough, entire country, right? What are people doing to be in action with obviously getting the word out, right? To be able to engage folk. What innovative ways are we using to dispel some of those myths, to engage those more difficult to reach populations who will say, you know what, I don't trust this at all? What are some of the strategies, some of the things that you all are doing?
So one of the first things, and I'm glad that you're bringing up mythology, because there is fake news that has ensued, right? The federal government tried to include a citizenship question on the census. The citizenship question will not appear on the census. The citizenship question is out of the question. But let's talk about fake news. Even if it was there, which it is not, Title 13 protects your information, no one would know for 72 years.
So there's no citizenship question on any of the census cards or the information that's being gathered, and Title 13 protects it.
It would have protected it anyway. And so this was fake news. This was designed And it's done some damage, to do damage, and to dissuade people, discourage them from filling in the census. What we're doing is having a series of teach-ins, truly grassroots, civil rights style, because the census is part of our right. We have a right to be counted, and we can't let anybody count us out. And so this is a civil rights movement right now, today, in our time, in our city. This is a social justice movement because everybody, every 10 years are on the same side, right? Everybody's counted, everyone's included, rich, poor, despite your background, despite where you live, whether or not you're a parent, no matter what your faith is, or whether or not you're agnostic or atheist. Everybody counts. And so it's critical that everybody participates. And so in true civil rights style, we're doing teach-ins because it's important that people know what the census is, how to get it done, when it happens, and what's the big deal, why it really matters. And today is Teach-In Tuesday. So across the city right now, there are over 60 different teach-ins happening.
60?
60. We started at 9 a.m. and I have the pleasure of doing the last one that starts in Brooklyn at 8 p.m. tonight. And we're going to be talking to people about the census, what it is, what matters, what's really at stake, and how to get involved and how to volunteer with NYC Census 2020 to get the information to our neighbors, our schools, our houses of worship, our family, and our friends.
So for our viewers, right, who may be interested in these teach-ins, right, we're talking about New York City. Are there other states, obviously, that offer these teach-ins, or just New York City for now?
Well, there's no city doing exactly what New York City is doing.
Because New York is unique, obviously.
Absolutely. And with an investment from the mayor and the New York City Council of $40 million for this census campaign, where we will educate about the census, inform people about the mythologies and the things to watch out for, and then agitate them and ignite them and empower them to get online and do that census or pick up the form or complete it and do it in the mail. We're one of the largest investments of any city in the country. And so, you know, if it happens in New York, hopefully it will happen around the world. But everyone, everywhere is talking about the census and preparing for it because it is the largest single mass mobilization of people in the country during peacetime.
So what if I'm a person who's not technologically savvy? I don't know how to like get on the computer and like fill out a census form, or like what support can you give me for someone who doesn't know how to use computers or like fill it out?
Exactly. So the Federal Census Bureau, for the first time ever, is going to be available online. Never been done before. It's also going to be available on the telephone. People can call a phone number and speak to in one of 13 different languages and get the census done.
So it's in 13 different languages?
On the phone.
On the phone.
And online, there's a number of different language guides, including you can set your browser for the language that you desire. Then many of us will be getting the census form in paper form. And if you don't fill in the census, they're going to be sending you a number of mailings starting March 12. You'll get at least 5 of them, where the last mailing will be a paper form before the federal government starts knocking. And so if you don't want strangers knocking on your door, you don't want the federal government knocking on your door, like most New Yorkers, because I wouldn't answer the door either. I'm a single mother of 2. And I don't answer the door for people I don't know. I don't pick up my cell phone for people I don't know, right? Let alone the door. And if you don't want the government to come knocking on your door, we encourage you to get it done by April 1. Self-respond, because it's the most accurate information. Don't let anyone speak for you. Don't let the guy on the corner who doesn't know you, who doesn't know your whole family, speak for you. Stand up and be counted. And help everyone else to get the word out by joining your local neighborhood organizing census committee. We've broken the city up into 245 different neighborhoods because we are all about being neighborhood strong. You know where to get the best parking spot, the best slice of pizza, and what bodega's got the best Cafe Bustelo, right? And so neighbor to neighbor, going building to building, school to houses of worship, we want New Yorkers informing and educating other New Yorkers so together we can get it done. And you can go online to nyc.gov/census and look at the map, click on it, look at your neighborhood. You can look at your ex's neighborhood, no judgment, right? And see how bad they really did. Because some communities from southern Brooklyn, with 35% of the people there did the census and self-responded, to all the way up to Washington Heights, who organized in 2010 and 76% of them did the federal census and self-responded. And as a result, schools were built in that community, and they elected the first Dominican American congressperson, right? And so there is power for the community. There are resources for the community, and our ability to stand up, be equal, and be counted.
I mean, it's just amazing, right? The work that you all are doing. I'm thinking about, you talk about the resources that are needed. All of these things are happening. The mayor has funded this to make sure that people are in action with gathering all of this information and data. What's your forecast of the amount of people that you think will respond to this based on these initiatives? I know it's a bit presumptuous or whatever, but what's your forecast? And what do you anticipate?
So, what I will say is that the bean counters have spoken, and the Federal Census Bureau has calculated and tabulated that even though the national average for self-response is 76%, they expect that to decrease. And they expect New York City not to come in at the abysmal 61.9% of 10 years ago, but at 58%. And I will tell you, with our four-pronged approach in New York City of having community-based organizations funded to the tune of $19 million in grant money. We funded 157 community-based organizations speaking 80 different languages to go into communities, specifically the historically undercounted. They are messengers, they're validators, they're people trust, and they literally speak the language of the deal.
Yeah, because they're from the community,
Absolutely.
They know each other.
As cute as I can be, you're not going to listen to me if you don't know me.
Sure.
But your neighbor, your faith leader, the person that helps you fill in your forms and get your benefits, you know that person and you trust them. And so we funded 157 different organizations to the tune of millions of dollars to go into communities and do that. We're going to have a multi-million-dollar ad campaign. So in a few short weeks, we hope that everywhere you turn, you see census, and we make you so sick of it that you just do the thing. We have our on-the-ground organizing, which is our field campaign. And so we have field associates going to be all across the city. We're working with over 200 different CUNY students in a census corps that speak multiple languages as well. So everywhere New Yorkers go, we're going. But even in this four-pronged approach, and we're using city agencies, there are over 350,000 people that work for the city. And many of them are union proud and union strong. So we're working with labor, we're working with education, the Department of Education. We're working with business partners, the American Business Association for New York. We are working with everyone who is willing to work. And if you can't do two jobs and work for the census, if they don't call you, come to us. Give us a couple hours a week and volunteer in your local NOC, because together we're going to get this done. There are people much like myself. I work with an amazing team of people on the city level that left perfectly good jobs in order to commit to getting this mission done. And I haven't spoken to one of us that is willing not to have a victory. We're going to work until we get this done.
Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate this. It's always never enough time for us, right? But thank you so much, Kathleen. And I thank you for giving us your thoughts and your observations about the 2020 census. And I thank you, the viewers, for joining us for all of the thought-provoking discussion. In the meantime, on behalf of the Fortune Society, we thank you so much for tuning in to both sides of the bars. If you're interested in finding out more about the Fortune Society, please check us out on the web at fortunesociety.org. That's fortunesociety.org, or on Facebook by typing in the Fortune Society. This is Andre Ward, and I appreciate you joining us as we critically look at both sides of the bars.